Today you're going to learn how to gather some data, organize the data, plot it on a line plot, and then generate questions about it. You're going to be working on this task about our class. Now, your teacher might have different data for you depending on your class. So I'm going to walk you through how to do it, but look to your teacher for specific instructions on your class's data. If your teacher does not give you instructions on the class data, then just follow along with me and use the data that I give you. So it says today we'll be graphing data about our class. We will look at two different pieces of data, the hours you sleep at night and how tall you are. So we're first going to walk through how to do this with the hours of sleep. How many hours did you sleep last night? To the nearest half hour. Let's say you slept 8 hours. Now we're going to collect our class data. Again, this is the part where your teacher might give you a different way to collect class data. I'm just going to make up a class data set. So it might be your classmates' information here from your teachers, or you could just use the one that I'm going to give you. So let's just say someone slept 7, someone slept 9.5, 8. There's another person slept 8, 7.5. Someone got a good night, 10 hours sleep, 9.5, 7.5, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6.5, 10, and 9.5. Okay, again, yours might look a little bit different, but it's the same process that we work through in order to organize it and plot it. So your next step is going to be to reorganize the data. And when we reorganize the data, it just makes it a little bit easier for us to go through the next steps. So in order to reorganize the data, we're going to rewrite it in the order from smallest, so the fewest amount of hours, to the largest, the most hours. So you're going to take this information and you're going to put it into order from smallest to largest. You could do it a couple different ways. Like I already see that the smallest number in this data set is 6.5. So I'm going to start with 6.5. And then you might want to cross that out knowing that you've already used that, because when there's multiples, like there's multiple 7s, it's helpful to cross out the 7 that you've already organized. So pause this video and reorganize your data right now. Okay, so this is how your data set should look now. And you can see the benefit of organizing your data this way. That way you can see, oh, 3 classmates slept 10 hours. When you look at this data, it's not as quick for you to say 3 classmates slept 10 hours because the 10s are all separate. So reorganizing our data is a really important piece. The next step of this task is to make a chart of your data. So hold on, let me move this up so you can see it. Now we are going to put the numbers of hours sleep here, and then how many students, we're going to tally them down here. So for example, and I'm going to do it from smallest to largest again. So I'm going to do 6.5, and then I'm going to do 7, 7.5, 8, 8.5, 9, 9.5, 10. Okay, now I'm going to tally how many students slept that amount. So in here, this is again why it's so nice to have our data organized like that. I see only one person slept 6.5, but I see 2 people slept 7. So this does not represent 11. That's a tally for 2 students. Fill out the rest of this chart. Okay, so this is what your tally chart should look like. And now it's even more organized. So we went from having really kind of messy data up here to then organizing it and then taking it to the next step to organize it. This is now really helpful for us if we want to chart this data because we can see right away how many hours were slept and then how many students slept that amount of hours. Okay, let's continue on. Now we are going to make a line plot. And in order to do that, we are going to indicate down here the hours slept. So I'm going to start at 6 hours, then I'm going to do 6.5, 7, 7.5, 8, 8.5, 9, 9.5, 10, 10.5. You can see that my numbers are super close here to one another, so I could either write them smaller or I could even skip. If my line is a little bit longer, I could skip every other one just to keep it a little bit more like neater, but it's the same idea. So now we're going to take this lovely chart that we made right here, and we're going to plot it on our line plot. So how many students slept 6 hours? 0. How many students slept 6.5? 1. And we're going to indicate that one student by just drawing an X there. How many students slept 7 hours? 2. So that gets 2 X's. Okay, what about 7.5? Well, that's also 2. Pause this video and use this data to finish this graph. Okay, so this is how your graph should look now. You can see that we went again from really messy data to a little bit more organized to pretty well organized, but now just having a good visual of what our class data is on hours slept. So now this is the really fun part. We're going to come up with as many questions as we can about this data. So what are some mathematical questions we can come up with to represent the data here? So I'm just going to give you a couple examples, but I want you to think of some on your own as well. But one question you can ask is, how many students slept more than 7 hours? So this is a good mathematical question because I need to use the data from here in order to answer it, and there's numbers involved. I think I've said this before, but questions like, what color is the blanket that the student slept with at night? Sure, it's a question about sleep, but it's not the mathematical question that needs to refer to this line plot to answer. So consider that. Another question is, which number of hours did most students sleep? So then I could go back up to my line plot and see that 8, 9, 9.5, and 10 all had 3 students. So that would be the answer to this question. What are some other questions that you have that you need to refer to the line plot to answer? Go ahead and include those here. Okay, so now that we walked through that together, you're going to do it on your own or with a partner And now we're talking about height and how tall everyone in the class is, so the nearest half foot. So let's say that you are maybe 5 feet 3 inches. We're going to round that up to 5.5 feet. But if you're 5 feet 2 inches, round that down to 5 feet. If you're 5 feet 10 inches, round that up to 6 feet. I'm not going to walk through the rest of this with you because you're going to do exactly what we did before, but I'm going to go ahead and give you a sample piece of data here so that if you did not get the class data, you can still do this task with the data I'm about to provide for you. Okay, here's a class set of data that you can use. Again, only use this data if your teacher and your class did not gather your own data. And then you're going to walk through the same exact steps that we did about our hours of sleep. And the only difference now is when you come up with your questions about your data, go ahead and answer 2 of your questions. So an example is, we answer this: which number of hours did most students sleep? Well, they slept mostly 8, 9.5, and 10. So be sure to answer 2 of your questions, but spend a lot of time coming up with the amount of questions from the data. Like, this is the really fun part, that you get to be creative and also really push yourself to see what kind of questions you can come up with that are mathematical and that use the line plot to answer the question. Good luck, and I can't wait to see all the different questions that you come up with based on this data. Sorry for the long video, but it was really important to walk through.